welcome to the Kelly Roach Show, a place for no fluff, easy to implement, 20-minute or less business and leadership lessons to help you build a sustainable business that scales. Let's get started. Welcome back, everybody. I am so excited to have Allie Brown back on the show today. She's one of the only people that we continue to invite back to the show. And every single time I hear from you all, the amazing transformational shifts that you have in perspective and mindset, listening to these dialogues. Allie, I'm so excited to have you back.
I didn't know that I'm one of the few repeat offenders or invitees.
You are one of the very few repeat offenders. And actually, I slowed down even bringing guests on at all because I don't want to bring people on just to bring people on. I want to be really, really careful about, like, you know how this world is that we live in, Allie. And like, it's like you want to protect your people kind of thing. And yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I remember like when I was growing my show, there's a period that you're like, okay, we're just supposed to do this, right? We're supposed to get some great, and they're great guests and interesting people, but then you start really like, I think people are getting tired of the how I built this conversation also. And they would rather have, interesting conversations. And I know that probably just like you too, they want to hear more solos from you. I bet like they want to hear just more of your pontificating on things where they're at and like what you recommend and what your advice is. And I think, it's great to be back because you and I have a good rapport and then we seem to go right where it's needed.
Yeah. So just for anyone that has not heard the previous episodes where Allie came on, so Allie was my first business coach. I was in her Elevate program in, I think it was 2013 and 2014. And I have been a client of Allie's. I was in her Premier group. I'm now in her Trust organization, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But Allie is someone who has been a leader in the online space for so long, but she is a master of reinvention. And one of the reasons why I love having you back, in from season to season, Allie, is that you always have a very wise and mature perspective from the outside in. I think because you've been in the space, you've grown through the space, you've done all the things, right? You did like all the awards and you had the huge company and you did the mass internet marketing thing. And then you pivoted into boutique and then you stepped out of the coaching world completely and you built the trust. And so I just think you bring a really special and unique perspective that I think people can really benefit from. And I actually was just recording an episode earlier today and I was talking about how one of the things I'm seeing in the online space is this severe lack of perspective because everyone is in these little tiny bubbles of tunnel vision. And most of the people that are teaching things in the online space, they've only ever built one thing in one way.
Yeah.
And so of course they don't have context, right? It's like they only know the way that they know because it's the only thing they've ever done. And I think the value that's so interesting about the dialogue and conversations that we've always been able to have over the years is like, you've kind of been there, done that in a lot of different ways. And you've been really intentional about these pivots and reinvention over the years. You're always up to something, but we never know, like right until it happens. There's always like a period of silence before.
Yeah, I kind of go up the mountain and hide. You're right, like up the mountain in the cave, right? And then I come down and I'm like, I have something to share.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. And it's always a surprise and it's always something uniquely different. You obviously released, the new corporate program inside the trust that I think is still kind of just inside for right now. But, you always have something that is new and different. And one of the things you and I were chatting about before we started the show today, I was sharing a little bit how we're talking so much on the show about reinvention. You were talking about a really interesting thing that I want to dig into around the idea of the personal rebirth, right?
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit like how that's been coming up with your clients, what you're seeing, maybe some of the key things that you would share with people that maybe feel like they're coming up on that or they're there right now and they're not quite sure what to do with that. Right.
Yeah, there's so many layers to this. It's fascinating. And I'm working on a concept that for women business owners, I call the tunnel, and I got that term. I want to give her credit to Alison Armstrong, whose early work on like men and women and like where I first kind of got my head around like the relationship between the sexes and stuff. And she talks about something that men went through in their life that's been labeled as the midlife crisis, right? But it's really more of a shift. I remember she shared a shift from doing to being. And the majority of the women that I find come to me and that I've worked with who are at these really interesting places or in these places of transition where they've already proven kind of, I think there's a stage that I know for me, it was like, I need to prove what I can do. Like, check this out. I'm Allie Brown, and it was so fun. And we did all this stuff and things. And then, you get to a point that it's new for us to understand the opportunities we have and that making shifts is normal and expected, reinventing is normal and expected, wanting different things is normal and expected. And there's these layers to making these decisions, though, that I find that underneath can be even guilt and shame and like not wanting to carry through maybe the model that you thought you wanted or that, and we forget that this is normal. First of all, it's normal in business, but then for women, how we work cyclically, I really want them to understand that it's an exciting time. And I'm curious if that resonates with you, what I just shared.
Oh my gosh, so much. I mean, I think for me personally, my own experience has been about every 2 to 5 years, I go through like a major reinvention where like I'm doing like a very strong change because I feel like I've outgrown what I was doing. And I also feel, to your point about the personal rebirth, Allie, I turned 40 this past year and I was doing some writing the other day and I was thinking to myself, this is the first time in my life I don't feel like I'm in a rush. I'm not running anywhere. I'm not charging at anything. There's nothing left to prove. Doesn't mean I don't still have huge goals and I'm working towards them, but I feel like that shift from doing to being is huge.
Yeah.
Where you're finally like, whatever you want to do and whatever you want to accomplish, it's like you can be at peace with like just progressing towards that in like a safe and steady way versus the like loud banging and like running around and like right.
Yeah. And then there's layers on it too. Like I wonder if this is also a theme of our time and the current time we're in, but also add on to that the ages that we're at, right? Because your 40s and 50s are bliss in like you know what you're interested in and not interested in. I feel like your sense of competition diminishes a bit and you realize, okay, doesn't need to be part of the game as much maybe as it was in the beginning when you just scrappy and it was fun and go for the fight. And and so, just for example, the few of the private clients I do still work with, 2 out of 3 of them are going through, or have gone through an acquisition of their company. They're exploring now what they want to do next. They're at this place where it's like, okay, what is this really about? And I know for me, that started when I had the kids. It's funny because you say Elevate 2013. I'm like, that was 10 fucking years ago. Oh my God. 10 years ago, because my kids are 10. I'm like, 10, baby, 10, And I was like, wow, that's when I knew that was a catalyst for making a change. At that time, probably wouldn't have been brave enough to do it, but it had started to percolate, wanting to make the change. And so, if you're watching this or listening to this right now, I'm sure you're giving this message and the other shows you're doing too, is like, give yourself permission to step back, gain perspective, which is what you mentioned, which is why people don't get that perspective. They're in it so much and so myopic, and have a breath and kind of look at what's going on in not only your industry and your market but like where are you right now in your life? Like where do you want to be and go and do? And I know for me it was incredibly excruciating to give myself permission to do that. And even now I'm doing it again. I'm doing it again, and I'm kind of like, when does this end? And I realize I just think this is the cycle, right? This is the cycle where we take the breath and want to do things deliberately and with intention and with great joy.
Yeah, I love that. And I think one of the things that I realized in talking more about this that I think can be really powerful for people too is like, I think most of the time when people go through like a big pivot or reinvention or, rebirth, a lot of times it's like because they're super burnt out, something isn't working, they're frustrated with the business, like all of those things. I think that if you flip the script on that and you look at your career as something where it's not one long line, it's these seasons. And like each season has like a spirit and it has a form and it has something unique about the way that you're approaching it. And like I know for me, like I'm always going to keep I'm never going to stay where I am doing the same thing for a long time. There may be things at the core that stay the same, but like things will change. I think if you give yourself permission to just be okay, like I'm going to intentionally keep reinventing because I'm not the same person that I was 5 years ago. It's a completely different feeling because I agree with you, Allie. I think a lot of people feel so much shame when they built something and then they don't want to do it anymore, or they feel like very stuck in the business that they've created and they want to go in a new direction. And it's like all these emotions and feelings and overwhelm of like, what do I do with this? You know, I want to be over here, but now I'm over here. And I think like embracing that. And but I will also say my observation, and I'm interested in your feedback on this as well. Obviously 2023 has been a year that so many people are closing their businesses and they're leaving the online space in droves, right? And it's crazy. And for people like us, it's like it's not any harder now than it was before the pandemic. Like this is, you know what I mean? But I feel like for a lot of people that had their first big win during these couple easy
Tell
years.
me about this though, because I've heard people talking about it. Have there been like big name people saying I'm done or like I'm not following? Like, oh really? And why?
A pretty significant amount of people. And I'm talking people that have established brands and establishes multiple seven-figure businesses, not just small businesses. So anyway, I think that being nimble in your mindset and looking at your career not in a straight line, but in these seasons of growth and change allows you to have the freedom when you start to get the instinct and intuition that maybe there's an incongruence and maybe it's not working anymore the way that it was. And maybe it's because you don't anymore resonate because you're not the same person, like listening to that instinct. Because I always say it's either disrupt or be disrupted. Like if you keep going along the same path, but you no longer are actually bought into what you're doing, someone's going to come along that has the energy and conviction that is earlier on in that cycle, and they're going to take your business away. Like it's like eat or be eaten, right? But if you align your business with where you actually are, season of life, what is important to you? What do you actually want to do now? What do you actually want to talk about? Like I know for me, and I know for you, Allie, it's been this way too. Like you get to a point where you've been doing something for a certain amount of time and you're like, I actually can't have this conversation one more time. Like I don't care if you will pay me $10,000 for 30 minutes of your time. Like I am done having this conversation, right? You just outgrow it. And I think what happens is a lot of times you have that instinct and you have that feeling, but I think then people like kind of freeze and they're like, what, I don't know. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, totally. And then you feel guilt. And I remember one of my early mentors was Dan Kennedy. He's always like, there's always a price, you could charge, like that old school mentality is like, you just charge enough that it's worth it. You have the freaking conversation. And I remember him coaching some dentist or in a dental practice. And he told him to put a sign in his, private office that said, you can stand anyone for 30 minutes, like you can get through any client for 30 minutes. Those guys cracked me up. I saw so many stories about like how they coached. And I was like, oh, make a note of that one, but I don't think I want to, I want to do things differently. But yeah, it becomes such a shock almost to your frequency once you start shifting that it does feel like so foreign to go back or go over here and then kind of immerse yourself in that world again. And have those conversations. And, we're not diminishing where any business owner is at. But here's the thing, ladies, like there's hundreds of thousands of coaches who can go help you. Like, you know what I mean? Like we're not the Mother Teresa of coaching. Like, we're not helping the poor huddled masses. Like, there's so many. Here's what you have to remember: as a woman, we feel like we're abandoning people too, and we want to be liked, and all this stuff kind of figures into this, that you don't want to say no to business, or you want to be super clear where you're going next, and people will be upset. I had people upset that I stopped talking about marketing. Like they wrote handwritten letters to me that I was talking now about more leadership, and I'm like, I don't know what to tell you poor people. Like you need to go. Where else can you come on about marketing?
There's lots of people that are teaching. Yeah.
Yeah, so
100%.
I think for me it's a huge frequency shift, but it's often terrifying because you're making these shifts at the same time of just deciding, okay, but I really like this revenue, right? So like how do I recreate that over here
Yeah.
with that much can I
Yeah.
create that with joy and with a different model? That's the terrifying part. And
Yeah.
so that's a bit of that transition as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge part. And I think that it comes back to courage and having faith in yourself, because if you build it once, you acquire the knowledge and the skills to be able to do it again, but to do it differently and built on the wisdom and experience that you had. And I know like you've walked away from very large amounts of, income. So have I, right? And I've done it in different ways and you did it in different ways. Like you had a huge, huge massive program and you were like one day you're like, this is it, this is not going to be part of my future, right? This isn't just, it's not part of my vision going forward. And I very much did that with bringing in the executive staff, because I did not want to be in the day to day of the coaching company anymore. I was like,
Mhm.
I want to continue to help people to get these results, but I've operationalized the content. It doesn't need to be me. I have skilled people on the team. It looks differently for everyone, but I definitely think that for everyone listening, there is a price that you pay, like to do what you want to do and to do how you want to do it. And you probably will lose some income in those transitions, but you have to have faith and trust in yourself that like, how much is that income costing you in your happiness? And what does it need to look like? And then if you did it once, you can do it again. You're just going to do it
Yeah.
differently, built on the wisdom and knowledge that you had from what you did before.
Totally. We're scared that it feels going backwards, right? We're scared that it feels like we're going smaller or
Yeah.
retreating. And I'm Allie Brown. I should always be doing things bigger.
Yeah.
A lot of that kind of came with that. And so it's such a huge conversation. There's so many layers to it. But if you're watching or listening to this, I just encourage you to start making notes. You don't need to make any quick
Yeah.
moves right now or big moves, but just start noting like where you think you'd really have fun going to.
Yeah.
Don't worry about the how yet, but just start with, oh, I'd love to do that, or I have this project I've always wanted to do, or do this kind of work with clients, or not work with clients at all, maybe sell stuff online and like be anonymous and get off the internet, which sounds awesome.
Yeah. I mean, boring businesses definitely have their appeal, don't they?
There is nothing
Right.
wrong with quietly making a lot of money. Like
And lots of
it's funny,
people do.
we all were launched into this stratosphere of personal brands and
Mhm.
social, and like think about in the timeline of history, like where were we all kind of like we were born into this time and launched into this time and became business leaders in this time.
Yeah.
And with that comes a lot of this unspoken kind of pressure to
Yep.
remain extremely visible, extremely on top. And that's something that I see people struggling with as well. It's very interesting.
Oh, for
It's so
sure.
loaded. This is so
Yeah.
loaded, this conversation.
Yeah. Well, but that's what I mean about perspective. I mean, listen, there's people that own parking lots that make millions of dollars. They're not sitting on live streams on social media all day. There's people that own dry cleaners. People down the street from me in a extremely wealthy area, they just sold off 5 of their laundromats.
There you
Like
go.
there are lots of people making millions and millions and millions of dollars running normal everyday businesses. No one knows their name. They're completely
Yeah.
anonymous. They're not working online. They're just collecting the checks. They're not working in
Yeah.
the day-to-day of the business. They're not on site every day. And that's what I mean about the lack of perspective. And I think that's one of my goals as I go forward, is really like bringing in these different perspectives from outside this little itty bitty bubble. Because I think that's the other thing, is like, not everyone is meant to be on camera 4 hours a day every day. I don't think any of us were meant to be on Zoom 8 hours a day. I can say that for sure. No wonder people are losing their minds, right? So, for me, I think that's what took me down the path of really wanting to build multiple companies, because now I have these other businesses that they don't need me and my face isn't on it and they can sell without me and I'm not a part of that. So there's a pathway, right, for the future. But I think that one of the things that I also see, Allie, is like, I think having foresight and doing planning is really important. And I don't think there's a lot of that. Like for me, when I started that transition with building these other companies and wanting to start thinking like an asset-based thinking instead of like Kelly, the person, like building things, I knew this would be like a 5 to 10 year process, right?
People don't want to do it because it's a longer game.
Yeah, it's a
don't
longer
they?
game. There's no instant gratification, but it's
Yeah.
possible for anyone. Like, you know what I mean? It's possible for any of us, but it's like being willing to take a step back from the instant gratification to do something. And you did this with the trust. Like when you came out with the business model for the trust, like you were completely like introducing a new concept. Like there's no way you could have thought in your mind that this is going to be like an overnight thing. Like you were introducing something that you had to like,
Yeah.
you were bringing a new idea in a completely new way to the market. And I feel like your perspective, I remember when you introduced it and you were talking about how this was your legacy play. And you were saying like, I'm stepping out of being like Allie, the CEO and the coach and all of those things. And now I'm a founder. And you were like, this is my new role. Right. But you had that long-term view and perspective from the inception.
Yeah.
Right?
And that was new for me. And I had to kind of undo that pressure of like, we need to launch this big, like, like I knew that this would be an evolution, right? And treating it differently than you would typically within our limited industry. What people don't realize is like the myopic view of like coaching, consulting online. I want you all this. If you can't see me, I'm putting my hands like so tight. This little lane, and you're wearing blinders, or like one of those VR things. It's even worse. Like nothing's real. And it's breaking out of that. And so it's so important. And one of the things that I did with the trust, like that was so important to me, is to have women from so many different types of businesses, industries, models. You have women with products, you have women with services, you have women from all walks of life and everywhere. But everyone's reached a certain point. So man, they've done the work, you know, and they can all share with each other. And that brings such different views to things. Such different views. It's just so important.
Yeah, for sure. So what would be a couple just reminders or perspectives, tips that you would want to give to someone that's listening today that's like, I've been thinking about my business, but maybe I need to also consider like, where am I? Right? Like, where am I in my own rebirth, my own, next season of life? Like, what would be some tips that you would share, maybe just from some of the conversations that you're having behind the scenes with other people that are going through that?
Take note, we're also trained to be super positive and everything's okay, but take note of what you're resenting. We don't give ourselves permission for that as women. We're like, no, I'm fine. Everything's fine. It's all fine. You need to like, take a note of things that you're feeling resentful about right now. Because I know for me, it was almost as if like I didn't have room to start thinking of what I even wanted. But I definitely was feeling overflowing with things like, oh man, I can't believe I'm still doing this after 15 years, or whatever it is, in your business or your company or whatever. Start making note of those things. That was the first step for me. The next thing I think you need to do, and it's hard, and I used to give this advice before kids, and I'm so sorry if I made it seem flippant, because now I have kids and I'm like, oh my God, I can't my advice was go away by yourself for like, a little retreat, like a week, or like, and now I'm like, maybe it's a day, right? Like maybe it's a day, but having that perspective, getting out and being somewhere where you have, bring a journal, glass of wine. I tell clients like, check a new hotel. Honestly, this is what I would do when I could. And the whole first day, you'll probably sleep. I'm just warning you, and you'll feel bad about that. But you need to sleep. Second day, you may wake up just with some new ideas and just like percolate on things, and just start making notes of, even if they seem nuts, like I'd love to do this, or I want to do that, or here's what's been calling to me, or there's some clues kind of dropping in my life about where I want to go. Just those two things alone are great starting steps. And then from there, I still do work with a few private clients, but it's a process, and things are kind of unveiled as you go through it. But those two will kick things off for you.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. It's great advice. And that's the stuff that we don't give ourselves permission to do though. Taking a day, taking 2 days to think about what the F you want to do with the next 10 years of your life. Seems reasonable, but we don't do it, right? So I think that's such good advice, because I think it's very hard also when you're hitting up against that ceiling or whatever it is for you. Like, it is very hard to have that perspective in the day-to-day because of what you just said, the frustration of the things that you're dealing with constantly that are kind of energetically, you're in a different frequency where you're not in this like solution creation imagination mode. You're in this like transaction mode of just dealing with it, right? So I think that step back is really, really important. It's great advice.
Yeah.
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 So we have the trust meeting coming up in September. I love the
Yes.
trust. And so I would love just if you want to share a little bit about the September meeting that we have coming up and just a quick explanation of what the trust is for anyone that's
Yeah.
not already familiar.
So over the years, I saw and was privy to and creating, like many of these like mastermind models. And there's a lot of great models out there. And there's groups for whatever you need, pretty much.
Yeah.
What I saw that was missing was something that would be an ongoing community for women who have reached the $1 million plus levels. And because it is a different conversation there. And it's actually an underserved market, though, unfortunately, which because so few women get there, there's a few great nonprofit organizations, things like that. There's but nothing that felt like a tight community. And all these women were coming to me going like, where do I go now? And I'd send them to some of these orgs and they're like, oh no, this isn't what I want. I want like what you had.
Yeah.
And so the trust is that community. And we have around 50 members from all over. We have 2 main meetings a year. The next one's coming up in September. You can get all the dates and info at jointhetrust.org, jointhetrust.org. We have an invitation call coming up, but I think this may air after that, but we'd be happy to talk to you individually if you want to reach out. And our members tell us that just there's still nothing like this anywhere, like the bonding, the generosity, which you don't see in a lot of other groups. There's zero competitiveness. Like no one really puts on airs. Everyone's just at a certain level and they kind of open the books and they're like, okay, let's help each other. And it's fantastic. My favorite session we do is those like where we're learning from each other and teaching each other and doing that peer learning. And so Sunira Madani is our guest speaker at the September meeting. She built Stacks, which was a fintech unicorn. She sold it. It had $1 billion valuation. She has an incredible story. She's joining us. She's a daughter of Pakistani immigrants. I really love the guests who have a lot of story. And there was like a bit of adventure to how they became who they are. And she's going to bring that to us in September. And then we're working on our next meeting in the spring in Naples. And the dates are on jointhetrust.org as well. So ladies, if you're at that level and you're interested or you know someone who is, please have them reach out. We'd be happy to talk with them and see if it's a fit.
Yeah. It's a great organization. I love it. I tell Allie I come and it's like my escape. I get to come and just relax and just like make new business friends basically. And it's awesome. It's a great community. It's a great organization. And I love what you've done with it. So you guys can check out jointhetrust.com and follow Allie on Instagram. She has really snarky, awesome stories that I very much enjoy.
I got to get back on there. I've been like laying low for a while.
You gotta stay consistent with that. I love the snarky.
Do you like my stories? Do you read them? Like
I love
you
the
read
stories.
the funny ones? Okay, good.
Yeah. No, definitely. That's the best part. But
Perfect.
Yeah, it was great to have you back on the show, Allie. We appreciate you. Guys, make sure you follow Allie on Instagram. Check out jointhetrust.com. And it was great to have you here. It was great to catch up.
Great to see you too. I'm going to get back to the pool with the kids.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. We'll see you back here soon.
Bye.